Welcome to World War II Ashes. Learn the untold.
The 13th of September, 1940, 05:12 a.m. The desert is already alive. Engines cough into motion, metal rattles, sand crunches under boots, cold night air clings to the skin, but the sun is rising fast, and with it, heat that will burn flesh and steel alike somewhere beyond the horizon. Guns are being loaded. This is North Africa, and a new war is about to begin. The wind carries the smell of fuel and dust. A compass needle trembles. Men tighten straps on helmets already soaked with sweat. They do not know it yet. But this empty desert, flat, blinding, merciless, will soon become one of the most decisive battlegrounds of the Second World War. Silence, then movement. Columns of vehicles roll forward, kicking up long plumes of sand like smoke trails in the sky. The war has reached the desert. The conflict spreading across North Africa did not begin here by accident. It was the result of fear, ambition, and geography colliding at the edge of empires. By the summer of 1940, Europe was collapsing under German pressure. France had fallen. Britain stood alone. And far from London, across the Mediterranean, Italy saw its moment. Benito Mussolini wanted glory. He wanted territory, and he wanted proof that Italy was a true great power. Italian forces already occupied Libya, a vast colony stretching from the Tunisian border to Egypt. To the east lay British-controlled Egypt and, more importantly, the Suez Canal, the lifeline of the British Empire, connecting Europe to India, Australia, and the oil of the Middle East. Whoever controlled Suez could choke Britain's war effort. From Rome, the desert looked like an open door, but maps lied. North Africa was not Europe. There were no forests to hide, no towns to shelter behind, only endless sand, brutal heat, freezing nights, and distances that crushed machines and men alike. In Cairo, British commanders understood what was at stake. Their forces in Egypt were thin, scattered, and badly equipped. Many soldiers were colonial troops, Indian, Australian, New Zealand, South African, thousands of miles from home, facing an enemy they barely understood in a land that wanted them dead. Yet Britain had one advantage: experience. The British Army had been fighting in deserts since the First World War. They had learned, slowly and painfully, how engines overheated, how weapons jammed with sand, how men broke down when water ran out. It wasn't mastery, but it was something. Italy had numbers, Britain had adaptation. In September 1940, Italian Marshal Rodolfo Graziani ordered his forces forward from Libya into Egypt. Nearly 200,000 Italian troops stood against fewer than 40,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers. On paper, it was overwhelming. On the ground, it was chaos. Italian columns advanced cautiously, terrified of overextending. Vehicles broke down. Supply lines stretched thin. Camps were dug into the desert, fortified with sandbags and barbed wire, static islands in a sea of nothingness. The Italians stopped, they waited, and that pause changed everything. Meanwhile, British reconnaissance aircraft circled overhead, photographing every trench, every truck, every gun position. Desert warfare turned the sky into the most valuable weapon of all. Whoever could see farther could strike first. At the same time, a new kind of soldier was being born, men who lived in the desert, the long-range desert group, small teams driving modified trucks hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, navigated by stars and instinct. They learned to survive with almost nothing, turning the desert into an ally rather than an enemy. War here would not be about holding ground. It would be about movement. Speed. Surprise. Endurance. By December 1940, British commanders realized something extraordinary. The Italian army, despite its size, was vulnerable. Morale was low. Equipment was outdated. Leadership was hesitant. The desert punished indecision more brutally than bullets ever could. Operation Compass was planned quietly. Officially, it was only meant to be a limited raid, to push Italian forces back from the Egyptian frontier. It became something else entirely. British and Commonwealth units struck with speed and precision, slicing through Italian camps one by one. Tanks rolled in at dawn. Artillery thundered. confused Italian units surrendered by the thousands within weeks. What had begun as a defensive war turned into a sweeping advance across Libya. Entire Italian divisions collapsed. Prisoners marched east in endless columns. British soldiers could barely believe what they were seeing. Against all expectations, a smaller force had shattered a larger one. But victory carried a dangerous illusion. The Desert War was not over. It was only beginning. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler watched events in North Africa with growing concern. Italy, his ally, was bleeding. The Mediterranean, once considered secondary, was becoming a strategic nightmare. If Britain gained full control of North Africa, access to the Middle East and its oil would be threatened. Hitler had not wanted a desert war. Now he had no choice. Orders were drafted. A new force was assembled. A commander was chosen, one who believed speed and audacity could tame even the harshest battlefield. His name would soon echo across the dunes, Erwin Rommel. As British troops celebrated victory under the blazing sun, unaware of what was forming across the sea, the desert remained silent. Wind erased tracks. Sand covered the scars of battle, but somewhere beyond the horizon, ships were loading, engines were being tested, and a new enemy was already on the way. The desert had claimed its first armies. Would it break the next ones too? Engines roar across the Libyan coast. Steel tracks bite into sand still cold from the night. German helmets catch the rising sun as ships unload men, tanks, and guns onto African soil. The desert has a new master entering the arena. Erwin Rommel steps forward without ceremony. No speeches. No delay. He studies the horizon, squints against the glare, and smiles faintly. To him, this empty land is not an obstacle, it is an opportunity. The Afrika Korps has arrived. Rommel was not supposed to attack. His orders from Berlin were clear: stabilize the front, support the Italians, hold defensive positions. But Rommel had learned something others hadn't yet grasped. In the desert, waiting is death. Within weeks, German reconnaissance units are probing British lines. Fast-moving armored columns test weak points, disappearing into sandstorms before counterattacks can form. British commanders, confident after their victories over Italy, are caught off guard. The war shifts instantly. German tanks, Panzer IIIs and IVs, move with discipline and coordination. Radios crackle constantly, linking armor, artillery, and aircraft into a single moving weapon. Above them, Stuka dive bombers scream downward, their sirens tearing at nerves before bombs ever hit the ground. Fear becomes a weapon. British troops dig in around Tobruk, a crucial port city. Whoever holds Tobruk controls supply routes along the coast. Rommel attacks hard, but Tobruk refuses to fall. Australian troops, reinforced by British artillery, turn the port into a fortress. The desert now becomes a battlefield of nerves. Days blur into heat and dust. Men fight dehydration as much as the enemy. Water is rationed down to mouthfuls. Engines overheat. Rifles jam with sand. Wounded soldiers bake under the sun before medics can reach them. At night, the temperature plummets. Frost forms on canteens. Men shiver in thin uniforms, listening to distant engines echo across the dark. Supply lines stretch hundreds of miles. Every bullet, every drop of fuel must cross open desert, vulnerable to air attack and raiding patrols. The side that moves fastest risks running out of everything. Rommel moves anyway. His tactics earn him a nickname, *the Desert Fox Star. He strikes unexpectedly, retreats suddenly, and attacks again from impossible angles. British commanders struggle to predict him. Maps become outdated within days. Meanwhile, British forces begin to adapt. New tanks arrive, including the Crusader. Desert camouflage improves. Airfields multiply across Egypt. Intelligence officers study German habits, learning when Rommel overextends, and he often does. The Desert War becomes a chess match played at 60 miles per hour. In November 1941, the British launch Operation Crusader. Massive armored clashes erupt across open plains, some of the largest tank battles yet seen. Dust clouds rise thousands of feet into the air, visible for miles. Crews fight blind, firing at silhouettes that vanish seconds later. Tanks burn, ammo cooks off, men crawl from wrecks on fire. The fighting is brutal and confusing. Victory shifts back and forth. At times, neither side knows who controls the battlefield. Eventually, British pressure forces Rommel to retreat. Tobruk is relieved. Axis forces fall back hundreds of miles toward El Agheila. Once again, it looks like Britain might finally break the desert war, but the desert never allows certainty. Rommel regroups. Reinforcements trickle in. Fuel shortages slow him, but not enough. In early 1942, he strikes again, smashing British lines and recapturing Tobruk in a stunning reversal. The fall of Tobruk sends shockwaves through London. Churchill calls it one of the heaviest blows of the war. British morale sinks. Rommel pushes east toward Egypt, chasing a victory that could open the road to Cairo and the Suez Canal. If Egypt falls, the Middle East and its oil could follow, but Rommel is running on fumes. His supply lines are stretched to the breaking point. British submarines and aircraft hammer Axis convoys crossing the Mediterranean. Every lost ship means fewer shells at the front. Fewer tanks repaired. Fewer men fed. The desert begins to turn on him. In July 1942, the Axis advance finally grinds to a halt at a small railway stop called El Alamein. Behind it lies Alexandria. Behind that, Cairo. There is nowhere left to retreat. Both sides dig in. The desert, once a place of movement, becomes a killing ground of mines, trenches, and artillery. The air fills with dust, smoke, and the constant thunder of guns. A new British commander arrives, quiet, methodical, determined, Bernard Montgomery. He does not rush. He does not gamble. He builds strength. Troops are trained relentlessly. Supply stockpiled. Plans refined. Montgomery knows the desert war will be decided not by brilliance, but by endurance. Rommel senses the danger. He is ill, exhausted, and short on everything. Still, he prepares. Mines are laid in vast belts. Anti-tank guns are positioned carefully. Every advantage is squeezed from what remains. The desert holds its breath. Two armies stare at each other across scorched earth. One side fueled by patience, the other by desperation. The next battle will not be a raid or a maneuver. It will be a collision, and when it comes, the desert will decide who leaves Africa and who never does. The 23rd of October, 1942, 9:40 p.m. The desert erupts. More than 1,000 British guns fire at once, the night sky ripped open by flashes of orange and white. The ground trembles. Sand jumps like rain. For soldiers crouched in trenches, it feels as if the earth itself is being torn apart. This is no raid, this is not another probe, this is El Alamein. For weeks, Montgomery has prepared in silence. Now, overwhelming force crashes forward. Infantry advances behind a rolling wall of artillery fire, step by step, through minefields the Germans called the Devil's Gardens. Engineers crawl forward under fire, clearing paths with their hands, metal detectors trembling in the dust. Every meter is paid for in blood. Rommel is not even on the battlefield when the guns open. Sick and exhausted, he is in Germany. His deputies fight desperately to hold the line, but British pressure never eases. When Rommel rushes back days later, he finds an army under crushing strain. Fuel is almost gone, tanks cannot maneuver freely, ammunition is rationed, yet Rommel refuses to surrender ground easily. German and Italian units counterattack again and again. Tank battles explode at close range. At night, flares turn the desert into daylight, revealing wrecks and bodies scattered across the sand. The air war never stops. British and Commonwealth aircraft pound Axis positions relentlessly. Stukas try to strike back, but Allied air superiority is now overwhelming. Axis columns are spotted and destroyed before they can move. Supply trucks burn miles behind the front. Rommel understands the truth before anyone else. This war is lost, not on the battlefield, but at sea and in the air.by. Early November, Montgomery launches the final blow. British armour smashes through weakened sectors. Axis lines buckle. Italian units, brave but under-equipped, are overwhelmed. German formations fight stubbornly, buying time, but time is exactly what they no longer have. Rommel orders the retreat. It is one of the most dangerous maneuvers in warfare, pulling an army back across open desert under constant attack. British forces pursue relentlessly. Air strikes hammer retreating columns. Vehicles abandoned for lack of fuel litter the sands. Men walk for days, some collapse and never rise, others march on through sheer will. The retreat stretches across Libya, then Tunisia. What remains of the Afrika Korps is a shadow of its former strength. Once proud armored units are reduced to fragments, patched together with whatever equipment can still move. Meanwhile, the war in North Africa widens. In November 1942, Allied forces land in Morocco and Algeria, Operation Torch. Axis troops are now trapped between two advancing enemies. The Desert War is no longer just about Rommel and Montgomery. It is about containment and destruction. The final battles in Tunisia are brutal and unforgiving. Hills replace open sand. Rain turns ground to mud. Axis resistance stiffens, but the outcome is inevitable. By May 1943, more than 250,000 German and Italian soldiers surrender. An entire Axis army disappears from the war. North Africa is over. The cost is staggering. Tens of thousands dead. Entire units erased. But the consequences reach far beyond the desert. The victory at El Alamein marks the first major, undeniable turning point against Nazi Germany. Churchill will later say, "Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, we never had a defeat." The Desert War reshapes modern warfare. It proves the dominance of combined arms, tanks, infantry, aircraft, and logistics working as one. It shows that speed alone is not enough without supply. That brilliance cannot overcome isolation, and it changes the men who fought it. Veterans speak of the desert with a strange quietness. The beauty, the terror, the endless horizon, the way sound carried for miles, the way death came without warning, from sky or sand. Rommel survives the campaign but never recovers his former influence. Montgomery becomes a symbol of methodical victory. The British Army regains confidence. The Allies gain momentum that will carry them to Sicily, Italy, and eventually Normandy. The desert, once seen as a sideshow, becomes a proving ground. Here, the Axis advance was stopped. Here, the myth of German invincibility cracked. Here, the long road back to Europe truly began. And yet, the sand keeps its secrets. Beneath the dunes lie rusted tanks, spent shells, unmarked graves. The wind moves over them endlessly, erasing tracks, smoothing scars, as if trying to forget. But history does not forget, because when the war in the deserts began, it was supposed to be a distraction. By the time it ended, it had changed the course of World War II. And it leaves us with a final question: if victory in Africa made the liberation of Europe possible, how different would history be if the desert had chosen another outcome?
Thanks for watching this chapter of World War II. If you find this video helpful, please support us by liking and dropping a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next chapter of this series. Until then, take care.